Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, Worth listeners. Maya and I are very excited to have our next guest who is here today with us in person, live in person, our first live in person guest. His name is Daniel Ross, and he is a practicing financial advisor with Ed Jones here in Virginia. And we're really happy to have him today because Maya and I have been wanting to have someone on who is a seasoned professional in this realm because, we have a lot of questions. We are not, financial savants. So we, thought this is a great topic,
Right,
especially
absolutely.
for people in our age group,
Yeah.
because, when you get to middle age, I feel like that's the time when you're like, okay, what next?
Right.
I've been saving for college, or I've been saving for retirement, or maybe
Or
you
you
haven't,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like, you're sort of at a crossroads,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So I feel like this is a timely topic, and we're glad to have Dan. Welcome.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Well, thank you
talking.
so much for having me. You
Yeah.
guys are already speaking my language, so I'm excited to.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll know more by the time we're done with this
There we go.
conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you are so timely with this conversation because you guys are officially the sandwich generation, right?
That's right.
And I see it happening with clients. I see it happening with peers, right?
Right.
So it's a great time to start thinking about these things. It's a great time to maybe feel like you're catching up with things. It's a great time to educate because mom is around in the long run,
Right.
and it's just the way it is. I'm not making that up for this podcast.
Right.
It's in the numbers. Dads go first. And one of the major issues I see in the long haul is that mom hasn't empowered herself enough or educated herself enough to just know the basics and understand, oh, yeah, it's an IRA, or, oh, yeah, it's an insurance policy, or just a little broad understanding of things really, really helps in the long run. And
when you
then
refer to mom, are you
Mhm.
talking about our moms or us as moms?
I'm talking about you guys.
Well, and women,
Because
exactly.
yeah,
Right.
because I was
Yeah.
thinking, it's something to think about also for our parents.
Absolutely.
Yes. So,
Absolutely.
but anyway,
Yeah, no, you are thinking about it
Yeah.
because that whole sandwich thing means, you're taking care of mom and dad to a point, you may
Right.
not be there yet,
Right.
and you're raising little ones to a
Mhm.
point they may not
Right.
be so little anymore.
Sure.
But they never go away,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Parents do.
Yeah.
It's just the way the ball bounces.
Yeah.
So no, love it, timely. Let's do this thing.
And I'm jumping into a question that's like the 11th question down, but it's
Cool.
simply because of how you
Yeah.
started. I love it because we jump around. But
do.
I love how you started the conversation because women don't really, I don't think it's natural for us. We're getting more schooled on empowering ourselves financially, but because of the sandwich generation and now this rise in gray divorce,
Mhm.
What is your advice for women, right, to insulate ourselves?
Mhm.
Should we have to bring in our parents, or should we be faced with a divorce at 60 or 65 years old or 70 years old? I mean, I didn't know what gray divorce was until a month and a half ago.
Neither
And
did
I had
I.
no idea it was on the rise.
After the Gray Bachelor or the Silver Bachelor.
Maybe that's what
No,
that's
I've
what
never heard of it.
Bachelor.
I never heard of it either. So.
But it's a real phenomenon, and I think part of it is because we are living longer.
Mhm.
And the other part of it is women won't settle for shit. So
Yeah.
it's like, and when the kids leave the house, sometimes you have a couple that's sitting there looking at each other going, we have nothing in common with each other. We don't okay.
Yeah.
Do we separate? And oftentimes it's the woman standing around like, now what do I do? How do I get myself financially secure?
Sure.
So what's some of your
Well, I
advice?
think starting now with that brief educate or that just baseline of education is the way to um, defend
Mhm.
for yourself
Yeah.
against those things.
Mhm.
Look, over time, we're kind of trained to do the joint account thing at the
Mhm.
bank, to do the joint brokerage account at
Yeah.
Evertones or wherever you're
Yeah.
investing money, and that's fine because those things are fairly easy to split, but they're also easy to get a hold of,
Right.
for one party or the other.
Mhm.
And I can't stop someone from doing that if it's a joint account,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, things like keeping your own money in your own back pocket,
Mhm.
unless it is for joint bills
Yeah.
or unless it is for joint adventures,
Mhm.
um, then that might be a good way to start. And you know, every IRA, every 401k, every Roth anything, those are all individual. I mean, that's in the name, individual retirement account. So those stay in your own back pocket and really can't be quote unquote rated or what have you, unless there's, you know, agreements in divorce that split things up.
Yeah.
And that's really, you know, if you're saving through work, or if you're saving individually in that account, there's a wrapper around it that defends it for you. Okay. Um, what I've come across a lot are, you know, the joint account that somebody wants to clear out. Well, then that shouldn't be your emergency money account. You should have that in your own back pocket or in
Are joint accounts typically like an IRA? Can an IRA be a joint
no,
account?
ma'am.
Okay,
No, ma'am.
so this is just really
Individual.
just a stock
Yeah.
joint account.
Or
Okay.
bank
Or a bank account.
Or bank.
savings. Yep.
Okay.
If both names are on it, then
Yeah.
both names can do whatever they want with it,
Yeah.
right?
But IRAs are typically
Just you.
got it.
Just you, individual you. The only way I can make an IRA joint is if like we wrote a joint annuity inside that IRA so that, you know, both names were on that annuity and it pays both parties for life. Way in the weeds. That's that's stuff we could approach on an intense day.
What are your thoughts on if you can answer this on prenuptial agreements? Are you for them? Are you against them?
I
Do you
mean,
think it's a way
I
for?
was gonna say it's a sensitive topic.
It's a sensitive topic.
Hey, I
but-
want to have my own separate account just in case.
Right.
if mom or dad already have
separate
money
ways.
going into that union, then do it.
Do it. Yeah,
Right,
that's a really
and-
good.
And frankly, if your partner doesn't agree with that, then maybe you should probably rethink that, because then it can kind of be obvious that they might be after some of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
good litmus.
all for it. All
Yeah.
for it. Everything to protect yourself. You know, that leads
Absolutely.
into the whole wills and trusts and
Yeah, right.
medical information, medical directives. And those are just other items that sort of protect you
Yeah.
and or can protect your family or could protect your preferred heirs.
Right.
And I say that, I shouldn't say the word preferred, but you know, a direct blood child versus a stepchild might have precedent when it comes to your money.
Yeah.
So you just need to define those things. A
Yeah.
lot of times you can do that with a transfer on death agreement or a COD at the bank and defining your beneficiaries on your retirement accounts.
Yeah.
And that's really easy, really basic. When it goes deeper than that, if you're saying you want things distributed at certain years or that kind of thing, after you're not around anymore, that would require trust work.
Yeah.
Okay. So just sort of different levels of protection.
Okay.
Mhm.
All really
Do
good
you
points.
find that people are proactive about those things? Or do you have to? Only we've had this conversation so many times, and we've written blogs about it. Where
and
it's
I
like,
think that this really just proves the importance of having someone you can trust and speak to about it and meet with, you know, a couple times a year, right? To make sure that you're covering all the bases, right?
Because
and things that you don't think about.
Because people are proactive about it after the fact.
Yeah.
Right. When mom becomes incapacitated, they go, oh, well, who's got power of attorney?
Right.
Well, we wrote one 20 years ago and never reviewed it. Or there's never even been anybody to talk to us about that.
Sure.
So those are items that are just sort of, they become essential, but nobody knows when someone is going to become incapacitated.
Right.
Yeah.
So having them in place when you're young, of course, always helps. However, if you know, life happens, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about this, and we're all hovering around the same age, which is an age none of us can imagine us ever being at.
I know.
But we still think we're young, and we still think, right. So let's go ahead and, I'll say, age up and do those things. It's important.
It is. And I think, I think Penny said it perfectly too about like why this is so timely is because I think, and I know that I'm certainly in this boat. A, I can't believe I'm 51, but B, I definitely am not where I want to be financially. I definitely have made poor decisions in the past. Life happens, right? We actually went through a bankruptcy. So where are we? I mean, luckily my husband is former military. And so we've got a lot of help because he was military. But like, to rebuild in your late 40s and your 50s
Scary.
is really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to expand, like, have you had, couples come to you that have had to go through a bankruptcy or have lost a house or have lost a business or whatever? And
Is it possible to start building wealth starting
Now.
in your,
It's-
late 40s, early 50s?
Absolutely never too late,
Mhm.
but you have to understand that it all is supplemental income in retirement.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really what you can build, how quickly you can build it, and then what you can sort of milk from that for life.
Mhm.
Some people have the luxury to build, and just sit back and live, quote unquote, off of their money. So
Yeah.
the income that money produces.
Mhm.
Other people are going to have to do the math, if you will,
Mhm.
and slowly spend down on that nest egg
Yeah.
over time
Well-
to get to their budget,
Right.
frankly.
Well,
Yeah.
can you help people determine that? I mean,
Totally,
with
yeah.
inflation, taking that into consideration and their goals. They're,
Mhm.
like, hey, Dan, I want to make sure that I can live how I'm living now
Right.
today because I'm comfortable the way
And
I'm
that's the
living.
goal. That's
And,
always.
and by that time, my kids will be, out of the house and it'll be just my husband and I. What do I need to really be socking away starting today
Mhm.
to get to that goal in, say, 20 years? Because someone like me, I'm like the type of person, if you're not working, you're dead. Like,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be working till
Right.
well into my 70s.
Right.
And the way that, people are living longer these days, I think a lot of people would agree. They're not just going to sit around doing absolutely nothing.
Mhm.
So for me, I would like to continue to work in some capacity. And so with that being said, if I have another 20 years of working life ahead of me,
Mhm.
what does that look like for a client?
Yeah.
Are you then encouraging them to put down more, since
Totally.
they're making more,
Mhm.
Absolutely.
that kind of thing.
Well, the formula is different for everyone,
Mhm.
right? And it is a work backwards kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we typically will put that pseudo retirement date on paper. Sometimes that's dictated to us by things like Social Security or pensions,
Yeah.
right? And then you work backwards and sort of say, hey, look, this is how much it will cost, hypothetically, in the future for you to have the budget you have right now. And that number is mind boggling. Even 20 years down the road,
Yeah.
it's scary. It's a big number. But it can be combated by the investments and the sort of typical returns of those investments, right?
Mhm.
So for everyone, it's different. For people that are starting late, it's really a psychological game in that you already have told your brain for probably a long time that you're starting too late. And it's simply not the case
Mhm.
because every little bit helps the cause, right? So if you're one of these people that says, all right, 65, I'm never working again,
Mhm.
your number's higher than, yeah, I can pull a side gig until I'm 70 or 72 or whatever.
Yeah.
I tell you right now, my mom switched gears in her early 60s and ate her vegetables and does her yoga, and she's 80 years old, and holy moly, I'd much rather vote for her than any other 80-year-olds or whatever 77-year-olds that we can vote for these days, because
Yeah.
she's firing on all cylinders, right? And her work becomes volunteer and fun
Yeah.
stuff,
Mhm.
but her budget is one that very respectably and complimentary she has kept low
Mm.
and doesn't require $10,000 a month to live.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And if you foresee via all the expenses that come our way, whether it's college or medical or just life in
Mhm.
general, our lifestyle,
Mhm.
if you foresee needing that $10,000 a month, well, you got to get busy,
Yeah.
right? Because there's no Social Security that covers that.
Right.
Frankly, there's maybe a couple pensions out there that do,
Yeah.
but go get that job today.
Yeah.
Good luck, right? I mean,
That's
they don't really exist.
Well, here's to add on to that. Do you typically have people investing in a tax-free account,
Mhm.
as well as some other, investment stock accounts, that kind of thing? So is it like I guess, diversified portfolio of tax-free and,
A lot of
tax-free
advisors, a lot of financial pros will talk about different buckets,
Okay.
and that's an easy sort of visual,
Yeah.
right? So they'll talk about having your emergency money
Mhm.
bucket, right?
Mhm.
So that's sort of not really even super invested.
Yeah.
Okay, it's maybe in the money market or something that's shorter term,
Mhm.
and maybe even tax-free.
Yeah.
That can create a little bit of extra income. And then they have their, longer term outlooks and, whatever they're doing through work.
Mhm.
That's tax deferred. It's not
Okay.
usually tax free, but typically work gives you that Roth versus traditional option today. All right. And that is a beauty of 401ks today.
Mhm.
401ks kind of came into vogue when pensions started going away,
Mhm.
right? Horrible, really, that pensions started going
Yeah.
away.
Mhm.
But people have now embraced it. It's been quite a few
Yeah.
years of decades. And that 401k now is a lot more pliable than it was when it started.
Mhm.
The limits are higher for what you can put into it. There's a lot more sort of profit sharing opportunities,
Yeah.
matching opportunities,
Mhm.
and you can do that Roth bucket where your money grows tax free and comes out to you tax free in
Mhm.
retirement versus the traditional 401k bucket
Mhm.
that you can grow tax deferred, but when you take that money out, it's taxed to you.
Okay.
Now, you get a break on the front end in taxes with that
Okay.
tax deferral.
So that's the major difference between a 401k versus a Roth.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that translates to IRAs because that's sort of where those end up
Mhm.
in your individual retirement funds, right?
Okay.
So the IRA is just sort of a catcher's mitt for old 401ks, et cetera. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about employers and what they offer you, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this in our conversation
Uh-huh.
last week about, okay, well, we also know entrepreneurship is on the rise for women. Women are starting companies in their 50s and 60s, which I
Absolutely.
think is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So as entrepreneurs ourselves, we've worked for ourselves before without any opportunity to invest, no 401k, no matching from an employer. So what is some of your advice to get, financially stable and also, set yourself up for success, later in life if you are an entrepreneur, even a solopreneur, whether you're looking to scale a company or you're going to remain a solopreneur?
It's the hardest decision, period,
Yeah.
for a small business owner to look at a dollar bill and
Mhm.
say, I could put this dollar bill back into my company and make 10 of these,
Mhm.
or I could put it in a long-term investment and maybe make 10% in a good year,
Right.
right? It is the ultimate wrestling match in your brain. So you would typically need a nerd like me tapping you on your shoulder and saying, giving me some money every year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
And what about paying themselves? Because that I didn't pay myself for years.
Right.
And I remember our financial advisor at the time that we ended up enlisting, probably 5 or 6 years in, was like, do you pay yourself? And I was like, no. And he was like, oh my gosh.
yeah,
And then and I'm sure it probably depends on the type of company, but he was like, you're a manager of your company, so you're going to draw directly from the company, but you should also be on your payroll. Like you should get a W-2.
absolutely. There's a couple reasons.
So explain why that's so important.
And they're going down the right path because they want you to have your quarters together
Mhm.
for Social Security. And if you're not paying yourself for Social Security, then you're not paying Social Security taxes
Right.
on yourself, and you're not sort of
Socking that away.
creating that annuity, which is
Yeah.
really what it is, for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Or through the government, right?
Right.
So if you're not paying yourself, then you would have to be creating that on your own.
Okay.
And you can do that if you're basically working by yourself. There's SEP IRAs, which allow you to sock away even more than sort of 401k limits do.
Mhm.
You can always do individual retirement accounts or Roths,
Mhm.
on your own, but those contributions are lower,
Mhm.
and I don't think those contributions are built to allow you to retire comfortably.
Yeah.
I think they're built to kind of supplement with Social Security and maybe some other savings that you have to create that sort of stability in retirement.
Mhm.
So, as a small business owner, you absolutely will always be torn, and you absolutely can probably make more money with that $1 reinvested in your company. But there's the long-term view, which again is so hard to do.
Yeah.
But the long-term view says, hey, I need to have a nest egg other than this business, which we all know can be violently what's the word I'm looking for? Just like the stock market
Yeah,
can be
it's volatile.
volatile.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
Don't worry
because
about it.
really-
I'm always.
These are supposed to be
looking for
my
work.
words. Right, yeah.
If you think about it, I mean, you're just reinvesting back in yourself, whether you do it through the business or, into an account that you're just describing, because you just never know.
Yeah, you don't.
It's a just in case situation,
Absolutely.
and just in case typically always happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that it is a good idea to
Yeah.
go ahead and invest in yourself.
Yeah. I
Some
agree.
sort of savings. And I've made that mistake as well.
Mhm.
Listen, just like you said, being an entrepreneur, it's just hard because you
Right.
want to reinvest. There's always something else that you could buy for the company, or
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, all those other things, I mean, all the
Right.
taxes.
You just made my heart like palpitate because I just remember those times struggling to make payroll, struggling to pay rent.
Sure.
Because for me, it was like I was on a super high for so long, and then it was like the crash of 2008. It was and part of the reason why I brought it up, because I think you get very excited when you start a business, especially when you're starting something that you know in depth, right? And you think you're going to have it forever. I thought I was going to have my business forever.
And you fall in love.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
And you can't help it because it's your baby.
Right.
Yeah.
You love it unconditionally.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important for all our female aspiring entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that are listening
Yes.
to this to
Absolutely reinvest in
Yeah.
yourself
So-
in the form of savings or
Totally.
retirement.
Absolutely. So Penny, when when we were talking buckets and we're talking all that jazz,
Mhm.
the last sort of circle of wagons bit that I didn't talk about was protecting it all
Yeah.
and covering it all.
Okay, let's talk
And
about it.
well, I mean, it's insurance.
yeah.
And that's a dirty word a lot of times because auto,
Yeah.
house insurance, we give them all this money. We feel like we never get anything in return and blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we have that sort of ingrained in our brain to despise insurance. And I can sit with a couple or individuals and say this every time I sit down, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but families, wealthy, long-term, lasting wealth, it's created by life insurance and owning stocks.
Yeah.
Period.
Mhm.
I know that sounds super simplistic,
Mhm.
but life insurance goes to your heirs tax-free, right?
Yes.
Life insurance goes to your heirs tax-free. There's nothing that does that. Like, I mean, that's
know,
such a
right.
gift. All right. And now they can put riders onto insurance policies that are permanent
Yeah.
that cover you for long-term care.
Yeah.
So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone
wow.
these days.
Okay.
And
Good to know.
it ain't cheap.
Right.
Nobody's ever said that.
The earlier you buy it too, the
True.
cheaper it's gonna be,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So
And we've had this discussion a few different times
We
about
have.
long-term care.
yeah.
Simply because we are living longer. And if you get diagnosed, God forbid, with, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, whatever, and you don't have that insurance. I mean,
No.
it's hard. I mean, it's hard when you even have the insurance.
Yeah.
But I think I agree. I think as a society, we need to, stop looking at insurance as this dirty little thing that is screwing us.
Yeah.
Because for every situation where we feel like we're not getting something back, there are opportunities like a long-term, what's the word I'm looking for? Plan.
Opportunities,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Where that can really save you and your family. God forbid there's some sort of, medical diagnosis.
And I've seen it go every which way.
Mhm.
So when you pay that first premium for any insurance policy, you are covered on that day.
Mhm.
And you're always thinking about 30 years later, right? So here we are around 50 and we're going, yeah, maybe we were ready, we need some long-term care.
Right.
Those policies count the most for the more dramatic or tragic moments.
Mhm.
And because any investment nerd can argue any day of the week, okay, $10,000 premium versus $10,000 investment. When you're 80, it's probably going to be kind of worth the same amount to you,
Mhm.
but tomorrow it ain't,
Right.
right? $10,000 in a premium for long-term care and life insurance tomorrow means the world to your family
Mhm.
versus that $10,000 investment.
Yeah.
So when I talk about life insurance, I kind of start to talk about being selfish a little bit.
Mhm.
And that's not ingrained in mom and daughter souls, right?
Right.
Your souls are going, all right, take care of folks, raise these babies,
Yeah.
do this and be awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, what happens, happens,
Right.
right? So it's hard for clients to be selfish on the front end because they're thinking about paying for college. They're thinking about covering for mom and dad. Well, yeah, think about yourself a little bit and protect it.
Yeah.
And
Really great.
you know what it takes to do that.
Mhm.
If you get real and really delve into it,
Yeah.
it's really easy to avoid that.
Yeah.
And here we are having a conversation about
Yeah.
maybe kind of having avoided that for a long
Well,
time.
it's just one of those topics, you know, that you just don't want to address.
No.
It's
Death.
morbid.
Right, incapacitation.
Yeah, you don't want to
Yeah.
think about it, but
That was
yeah, I mean, that is the one thing I think that Kevin and I invested in when we were young.
Mhm.
Got the discussion out of the way.
Yeah.
It gets taken out of our bank account every month. We don't have to have the discussion
Right.
again.
well, music to my ears in being able to do it young because you're still cheap.
Right.
Yeah,
Like if you,
Right.
I would love
Well-
for you to go through the practice of looking at what it costs then versus what it
Now.
would cost now.
but
It's mind boggling.
listen, we don't have whole life policies. I think we have a couple of Kevin got a variable life policy from his dad, like gifted to him when we got
Awesome.
married.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we each have term life
Mhm.
policies. And, you know, and I know that the difference between whole life and term life is there are significant, you know,
Sure.
like term goes up every whatever,
Yeah.
10 years or however many.
Once the term ends.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So I mean, is it still cheaper, do you think, like to
I-
invest?
And also talk about the difference
In
because
term-
not everybody knows the
Yeah,
difference.
okay.
between both.
There's a spectrum of life insurance and the coverage thereof. There's nothing wrong with term, right? So term is you pay a little bit, usually when you're fairly young, and you get, you know, 10, 20, 30 years worth of coverage if something drastic happens. And that makes a ton of sense when you're in your 20s and 30s and you have a young family or a small business, something like that, to have a ton of coverage early on in case something drastic does happen, right? And it goes through a bunch of different levels of sort of the way they're built out internally, all the way up to your old school permanent whole life policy, which
Right.
is you start whenever you start, you pay whatever that premium is, and that
Yeah.
death benefit stays with you until you go.
Okay.
A lot of folks will use that as a very conservative investment
Yeah.
because they know, hey, at 65, I know there's going to be X amount of dollars in that policy,
Yeah.
and you know I can go out and invest other stuff.
Right.
But a lot of people will use a term in the same way. Hey, it's inexpensive,
Yeah.
so I'll go ahead and slap a bunch of insurance on my family,
Mhm.
and then I'll go invest outside of it to
Right.
grow wealth,
Okay.
and everything in between. So it's really where you are today
Mhm.
and how you want to take it, or how you want it to be treated by your family in the future.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
So in our peer group, we're still sort of tweens when it comes to where to land that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because I definitely know folks that are having babies still,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And they may need that sort of immediate, drastic situation coverage.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they may be thinking, holy moly, I need to be socking this away because this kid's not going to take it.
Right.
I think we can all sit here as the kids and go, oh God, we
Yeah.
got to do that.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to, is that coming our
Is
way?
it coming our way? That's
Can I
right.
buy my life insurance, you know, or long-term care insurance?
Right.
And you can if you have that kind of capability, but
Right.
Yeah.
it's all out there to be discussed sort of in everyone's personal
So,
situation.
you know, we've been talking about insurance and retirement. You know, when you're first sitting down with, you know, a client and you're trying to determine where they should be investing their money,
Mhm.
right? Whether it be life insurance or retirement, are there percentages? So let's say, like, what percentage of your money should be liquid at all times for, like, say, emergency
Mhm.
funds, you know, and just savings
Mhm.
accounts, versus what percentage should you be putting towards retirement, you know, and so on and
That's
so forth.
Excellent question, and it's a sliding scale.
Okay.
You know, when you're younger, your emergency fund doesn't need to be 2 years long,
Right.
because you can go out and get a job,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And you can sort of shuck and jive
Yeah.
on that one and work hard. As you get older, that emergency fund does need to grow
Yeah.
because, frankly, your emergencies can grow.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
No matter how much insurance you have,
Yeah.
if a house fire happens
Yeah.
or if some car accidents happen, you have to be prepared
Mhm.
to cover your expenses for months at a time,
Yeah.
possibly, right? So the old school adage, 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months to a year as you get older,
Okay.
right? Of just sort of emergency cash, or these days, for the first time in my career, we have interest rates, right?
Mhm.
So you can put money in a money market, which I would have loved to have done for every one of my clients at the beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
But when the markets are flying high, everybody's got those big smiles on their faces,
Right.
and interest rates were, whatever, 1% or
Yeah.
lower.
Mhm.
So nobody's going to make that trade. And then a year later, when they have frowns on their faces, they want to make that trade because they can get 4% in that money market.
Mm.
But the market that they've been investing in is down, and
Yeah.
we know it's going to come back. It
Yeah.
just takes some time.
Is that where we're at now? 4%?
Yeah, money markets 4 to 5% right now.
It's pretty
Yeah,
attractive.
It's
Yeah.
pretty attractive. We can still sneak into short-term CDs for 5% or so, for that short-term emergency money.
Yeah.
Right. No long-term money in CDs or money markets.
Right.
It's just the rule. Sorry, I know it's so easy and comforting to look at a CD that's going to pay you 5% for a year.
Yeah.
But the market's in rebound mode, and we're looking at lower interest rates coming in the future, which could give us a little bit of growth in our investments.
Yeah.
So, and lo and behold, we're also in an election year.
Yeah.
Okay? And everybody thinks that's crazy because we all know that, red team and blue team
Yeah.
are going to duke it out, tell us it's the end of the world. And, our heart gets pulled in one of those directions. So we're, of course, going to feel that way. But what we don't look at are, the data. And that tells us that typically election years are good, and especially the months of November and December, because it's not about your heart of hearts.
Right.
It's about what companies do with their investment
Yeah.
and how their playing field is laid out in front of them.
Right.
So they know whichever team wins, they know the playing field for the next few years, and can sort of jockey their companies to be profitable in either environment.
Right.
They've done it for decades.
Yeah.
So that's really
good.
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, completely different topic that I think we could talk about, but like I have never thought about that.
Yeah.
Daniel. So you are like totally opening my eyes and ears up a lot of.
I mean, it's not what you hear.
No.
No.
But
Well, and I
it's
think
just
you-
a good point.
Yeah,
that
it's a great
everybody should
point.
know that in an election year you
Yeah.
should,
Well, I also think it hits on
Yeah.
So this leads to my next question: is like, how do you ease the fears and the concerns that people have about investing in the stock market? Because there's people out there that are like, I wouldn't put a red cent into the market, but they've been fed, these sort of misnomers.
Well,
So
you can't combat a mind that's already made up.
Oh, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, it's also a long-term game, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can lay out all the data, and you
Mhm.
can lay out all the years, and you guys, we're not in the worst of the worst that this nation is seeing. We're just kind of creating it on our own on the internet and everything else that we focus on or add to or subtract from. So yeah, this world's been around one or two more times. I would argue that, like in the early 60s when we were actually losing presidents and going to war and the government was definitely lying to us, right? Like it's been proven. Those times might not have been as good.
It's so funny that you say that because, and I can't remember the movie. Bobby and I watched the movie like a month and a half ago, and it was a historical movie, and it was about the guy, and he actually just got nominated for an Oscar. And I can't remember his name. It's horrible, but it's the guy that basically was the right hand man to Martin Luther King, and so a lot of the footage in it was like civil rights movement, early 60s, mid 60s. And I remember calling my mother after, like, every American should watch that movie right now. Because if we think we're bad now, like, people need to remember history repeats itself, first of all, right? And we have been in a much worse, we've been in way worse situations than we are right now. But I think, we're in a time where we have a multitude of ways that we can get information and where we can get information. And I think that feeds some of the mistrust.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we look for mistrust, we get fed
even more of it.
Right.
That's
So,
exactly
if you look for, happy
Don't
dog
search it.
videos, you're going to find a whole lot of happy dog videos. And
Don't go
I
looking
encourage
for it.
women to watch those instead of holy moly, the other stuff that we do.
I'm not having to.
That's why,
I
that's
don't
why it's
know,
called
like,
doom
I
scrolling.
looked at
mean,
one,
it's,
like golden retriever account one time on Instagram, and now my Instagram account is flooded with all of these like golden. But you know what? Because of what's going on right now, I'm like, I'd much rather watch golden retrievers.
Well, turning a blind eye to misinformation is probably really healthy,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So if I can pull people out of that mindset and lay out those long-term mountain charts of the market
Yeah.
that remind people that, oh, that crash in 87 was just this little blip.
Yeah.
And even like 07 and 08 now are, they're a tick down.
Right.
There ain't no doubt about it.
Right.
yeah,
But it's still just a blip on the long-term chart.
Sure.
yeah,
So just training people up, coaching people up on, hey, this is how to react in a downturn. And trust me, it doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I keep a teddy bear in my office and give people a teddy bear when they come in with their, mopey dopey,
Yeah.
the market's down, that's the end of the world, I'm never going to retire kind of atmosphere or kind of vibe. And I give them the teddy bear and I tell them to embrace the bear. This is a bear market. These are the good things that are going to come out of this.
Right.
And
yeah,
99% of them believe me.
Yeah.
yeah.
And 1% of them leave.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
Oh, we've
Yeah.
learned
And I
a
feel
lot.
for them. I
Well,
don't want them to.
yeah,
And,
you
and I
make a
know
great
their
point,
heart
because
is broken.
I just thought about this, if you're going to, bring in a financial advisor, I feel like you have to be the sort of person who's going to look at this as a long-term gain. Because if you
Absolutely.
aren't that type of person, it's kind of like, you're spinning your wheels, they're spinning their wheels, because
Yeah.
they're never going to get it,
Yeah.
right? And so, but it is, I understand their fears, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in a down market, but it always seems to come back. History repeats itself.
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
So
It's a
just,
huge leap of faith, though.
Yeah, it is. And people's fears lie in their money. They lie in their financial stability,
yeah,
what they can do with it, what they can't do with it. I know right now in America, we have a lot of families that are living paycheck to paycheck, and more so than ever. And credit
Yeah.
card debt is ridiculously high right now. So what's some of your advice for those people that literally are just trying to put food on the table? Right.
Yeah.
Like it's the mental struggle of like, I just got to feed my family. But at the same time, I don't want to be I don't want this to be a vicious cycle. So what's some of your advice to them about?
It's the best question. It's the best question. And
Great
of course, it's the
question.
hardest to answer.
Yeah.
yeah,
Because we have been having somewhat of a luxurious conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We talk about dollar bills stacking up, and we talk about somewhat affluent problems, right? And when we really should be focused on that, because the step from that paycheck to paycheck terror, which is what it is, if a tire blows or if a shingle falls off or
Right.
whatever their specific situation, Lord knows medical bills. So I guess I don't have the adage. There's no age-old adage to say, well, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps,
Right.
because that's not there, right?
Mhm.
So the struggle of being able to create on the first little opportunity that defensive emergency account is absolutely necessary. Minimalizing your world so that you can get on top of a credit card payment or on top of the credit card debt is absolutely step one. I keep a piggy bank in my office that says, clients cut up credit cards, because there's too many 60 somethings that have too much debt and not enough savings. And of course, 20 somethings are just at the tip of the
that's what they
iceberg.
do.
So if something bad does happen before they have that opportunity, they're kind of already in that cycle.
Yeah.
So yes, it's all about budget. It all boils down to budget. I preach that because it was drilled into me at a young age. I made the 7th grade basketball team, and promptly demanded that I have a pair of Jordans because they made chunky white boys jump higher and run faster. And they don't.
They don't.
They don't. But I was sort of laughed at, like, by my teacher parents, right? So they're both teachers, so our budget was tight. and I had a sister at Virginia Tech.
Mhm.
And when I wanted Jordans at age 12, I got the, hey, you can do math kind of lecture. And here's a stack of bills. Here's remember ledgers, like
Oh, yeah.
for your
Oh,
bank,
my father used to-
like a checkbook.
Uh-huh.
And
My
you
father
know,
still uses that.
it's
Still
priceless.
uses it.
It's priceless. It's how I, as a 20-something,
Yeah.
figured it all out.
Yeah, I
But,
regret not listening to him. That's
Yeah.
one of my regrets. Is my parents, similar to your parents, they could rub two pennies together and stretch. Like they could stretch pennies longer than anyone I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
And worked multiple jobs.
Mine as well.
And my dad used to like come sit next to me. I'm going to show you how money in, money out,
Yes.
how to manage your checkbook. I was always fingers in the ears, and I really,
What it all boils down to.
yeah.
100%.
No
And
doubt.
you know, all of this is leading to the question, Maya, that you had down here, which is financial literacy, and how do you teach
your
that
kids.
to your children, and what age do they really start to absorb it? Because I learned the hard way. I got into credit card debt right out of college. You know, they set up those tables
At college.
right.
At college.
like,
Do you
oh,
remember that? I had
$5,000
4
limit?
credit cards. I hadn't even had a job.
do I
I stepped
sign?
on campus
Yeah.
and they were like, here, it's like free money.
Free
And I'm
money.
trying to teach Sophia this today. I'm like, a credit card is not free money. Honey.
Yes.
Okay.
Sophia knows how to add and subtract.
Yes.
Wow.
You've already been taught.
Mhm.
It is the simplest formula,
Yeah.
addition and subtraction.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing there, you can't have shiny things.
Right.
Yeah.
And that to tell an American adult that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, to say no,
No.
to an American, no way.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear it. But children can still process the word no.
Right.
They may not agree with it, they may not appreciate it, but they still get it. And if you can equate that word no with a zero balance,
Mhm.
then it becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So they're already there. They've already been trained.
Mhm.
You were too,
Yeah.
but there were
Mhm.
shiny things,
Oh, absolutely.
or a 12-pack of beer, or whatever you needed that weekend to make that college experience great. Well, you know, you kind of spoiled yourself on,
Mhm.
and then you get the slap in the face at the end of the month, and then it's decision time,
Yeah.
right? Do I keep going and turn a blind eye,
Yeah.
which is very human and very, illogical but human thing that we do,
Yeah.
or do I, hit the brakes, cool the jets,
Yeah.
pay the bills?
I think for me, it was just something I had to do because, you know,
Right.
my parents didn't have a whole lot of money.
Right.
And so when I went to college, like, you know, they gave me like, I think it was like
Sure.
$200 a month to live off
Right.
of or something. So I had to save over the summer so that I could, you know, get through the next 9 months.
Yeah.
But, you know, so for me, it was something that I had to teach myself.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
But, you know, in this generation, I feel like, you know, the boomers and even our generation, the Gen Xers have more money that they give to their children. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. So it's kind of like, how do you teach that financial literacy of saving
Mhm.
and really not taking money for granted, right? So
Right.
I do think that that's a generational difference.
Yeah.
Okay. I see my peers dumping money from their own worlds into their children's worlds. And sometimes, of course, sometimes it's embraced and straight A's are achieved and a future job is in line. And other times it's fiddle farted away, or
Right.
whatever,
Mhm.
whatever the right word for that is
Yeah.
online. So I always, this is back to being a little bit selfish.
Mhm.
All right. If mom and dad are good, if mom or dad are good, then the kid's going to be okay.
Right.
Right.
Mm.
Then if mom and dad are okay, it's okay for that kid to have a little bit of a loan and start to understand what that means in the world.
Yeah.
Mom and dad can supplement those costs. If mom and dad have been lucky enough to save in a 529 plan or whatever for college, any way possible, or if they have the disposable income that can help pay for college. So if mom and dad are on the right track, the kids are going to be okay one way or another, right? But yeah, it pulls back to that budget and how you can.
Speaking of 529s, can you use 529s for any college expense? So tuition, room and board, and just cash,
Absolutely.
like spending money?
The spending money part of it, gets a little tricky.
Okay.
But if that money's being spent to buy a computer to be focused on college, yes.
Okay.
If that money's being spent for room and board, which includes, dinner,
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
right.
right?
Like a meal plan.
Yeah,
or
meal
something like
plan, right? It can go to all of that.
that. Okay.
And they've actually become a lot more flexible just in the last few years.
Mhm.
So what used to be, the Virginia 529 plan, that the Virginia 529 plan is universal.
Right.
Go to any college
Mhm.
around
Mhm.
and give you a little bit of tax break on the front end for the state you're in. But if there's leftover dollar bills, we used to scramble.
Mhm.
If let's say daughter's coming out with her PhD and there's still $10,000 in the 529 plan, which would be awesome.
Mhm.
It doesn't really happen very often,
Yeah.
but it can happen. You can convert some of that money now to Roth IRA, which is
Hmm.
priceless.
Okay.
For them
For
or for you
them.
or for yourself?
No, in their name.
In their
Yeah,
name?
they're the beneficiary of that money.
Okay. got it.
So they get it.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fantastic, actually.
And remember, it doesn't have to go to that kid.
Mhm.
That kid can become a nephew or a niece or a cousin or whoever
Mhm.
simply by, forwarding that money along to another family member.
Oh.
So it can be changed.
Okay.
All too. So it's not 100% sort of handcuffed to that kid.
Mhm.
It could be another sibling or what have you.
So how does a 529 work if for those?
Very similar to a Roth.
Okay.
You put some money in that you've already paid taxes on.
Mhm.
You get a little bit of a state tax break when you put that
Mhm.
money away per year.
Mhm.
And it grows tax deferred,
Mhm.
and you take it out tax free for college expenses.
Okay. All right. And how much can you put in every year?
$4,000 is the limit for your state tax break.
Okay.
And I think something like 300K is the limit on the top end. That, like,
Oh.
if you were, let's say you had received a big death benefit or whatever from grandpa
Mhm.
and wanted to put $100,000 away and forget about it, you could do that.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about the people that don't put money into a 529 plan,
Mhm.
but want their kids to have the best education. Like, let's say that they're going to be the first ones in their family going to college.
Yeah,
They're gonna
other
college.
avenues.
What are other
Yeah.
avenues to make college affordable
Okay.
for parents that are again maybe financially struggling,
Yeah.
don't have the money to put into a 529 plan, or they just have to allocate their money in other areas. How do without thinking that their kid's going to go play for the NFL or the NBA or whatever? Because
But
listen, we all
do
think
that.
our kid's going to be on Broadway or an actor or actress, right?
Mhm.
But like realistically, what
Start
are
from
some
zero.
other some other
So
things?
they've made it to the point where they can get into a college,
Mhm.
and mom and dad are paycheck to paycheck, and it is what it is. So every school has some sort of assistance,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna go anecdotal, and I'm gonna use myself. All right, and it's definitely not the most perfect example, but it took me until the last semester of my senior year to have the gusto to walk into the financial aid office and pack a bag lunch and have my number two pencils ready to rock.
Mhm.
And when you walk into that financial aid office as that kid and you say, "This is my major, I'm average,
Mhm.
sorry, but I still need grants and everything else to get through this."
Yeah.
Once they realize you're serious, once you show them your sharpened pencils for every
Right.
little bubble sheet or whatever they use now, I'm sure it's all on the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow, that dated me right there. But so
Just a smidge.
yeah, you probably won't have to
Well,
write an
we're-
essay. You have to
Yeah.
type an essay, which you might not have to write. But you commit to it. And I stayed in there all day.
Mhm.
And I fill out every $15 grant from the Joe Schmo Club
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Norfolk.
Mhm.
And I wrote every little essay and I filled out all the bubble sheets.
Mhm.
And after an 8-hour workday, I walked out with a semester paid for.
Yeah.
And it's out there.
It is out there.
But
Yeah.
when you're 18, you're going in blind for the first time, you get this offer for a loan.
Yeah.
And it's irresistible because
Mhm.
it's freaking
Easy.
easy on
Yeah.
the front end,
Yeah.
right? On the back end, it's impossible.
Mhm.
So that's is engagement from the kid.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
That's
if
great advice.
Yep,
It
if the
really is.
kid's engaged, man, get him in that office
Yeah.
and let him figure it out.
I
Yeah.
read somewhere that every year there's about $100 million of funding for college for kids that goes unused.
Poof.
Whoa.
So in other words,
$100 million
That
a
is
year.
insane.
And it goes back to, I think we are not doing whether it's school counselors, whether it's parents, whether it's coaches, we are not making it easy or I think it's a combination, easy and feeding the information to these children and saying, the world is your oyster if you
Yeah.
really put the work
Here
in
are all
to
the
go,
resources.
Here are all of the resources.
Work the resources.
Right.
You know.
Especially today, because guess what? We don't need a number 2 pencil.
Right.
There is like they call it like scholarship universe or like once you get accepted to a school, you then have access to this online database of, and it could be a scholarship for like future farmers of America in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
Like the scholarships come from all different places, and it's not, filling in bubbles anymore. It is actually sitting in front of the computer and applying to every single scholarship you think you're eligible
and
for.
it's in the news, you guys.
Yeah.
There are massive endowments going to either specific schools or in general that people understand the power of that diploma.
Absolutely.
And that's a whole nother argument. And it's a legitimate argument because there may be a crane operator out there that doesn't necessarily need X of a liberal arts education. Right. They can find their path a different way, but they still require a lot of education.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So to do those technical things or those sort of traditional construction kind of trade items, you still got to get trained up.
Absolutely.
And it's not cheap.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of, whether it's apprenticeships or even at major university sort of programs to lead you down that path.
Yeah.
That are out there, they still cost money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's still, you still have to achieve that somehow.
And I'm glad you hit that point too, because I don't think college is for everybody.
No.
Right.
And I also think like we've got to get back to the trades.
Yeah.
I think that we have to make trades more important in this world. We've got to make them more accessible to people. And we've got to let people know it's okay. If you want to go be a plumber, fabulous. We need more plumbers. You want to go be an electrician? Wonderful.
Remember when work was honorable.
Yeah, remember when work
Well, it
was
still
honorable.
is.
Yeah.
And just because you're not a billionaire doing it,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't be respected for it.
That's
Because I'll tell you right
exactly
now, every trade person who walks in my door is a rock star compared to this brain.
Yeah.
Well,
But I ain't got
not only are they rock stars, but they're making a lot of money.
Yes.
I mean,
You
I
can
think
get
people
started.
underestimate the trades
Yeah.
because here's the thing: not only can you be an entrepreneur at this and start your own business and have that freedom to have your own business and run your own business, which is a whole nother wealth of knowledge that's there's not one school that'll teach you that, but you get paid really well.
Paid really well.
And so I think it's a great point to make that, use that 529 plan to go to trade school, if that's something that you're interested in.
Absolutely.
Because you're right, college is not, it's expensive nowadays.
Absolutely. And take care of yourself because the trades typically require that physical aspect.
Yeah.
And that's what I see the most from guys and gals who have been doing sort of that repetitive thing over and over, whether it's underneath a car or whether it's, welding or what have you. I'm going to be very stereotypical here and say, hey, don't go home and drink a 12-pack every night.
Right.
Go home and do your yoga just like if you
Yeah.
were a pampered mother of like Yvonne working person.
That's right.
Because if you can take care of yourself and learn the business of your trade, you can be extremely successful.
Yeah. I also want to just make a note too about or for people that are listening that community colleges. We have a fantastic community college system here in Virginia. And our son did his first year of college at TTC, and then now he's a sophomore at Virginia Tech. And part of it was he didn't know what he wanted to do. Yeah, there wasn't a school that he'd fallen in love with yet. And if you don't know what you want to do, go to a community college, get all your general ed taken care of. I mean, it was like $2,500 for the year. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Versus 25 grand.
I think it is so smart.
Yeah.
What he did. Because what 18-year-old or 17-year-old knows what they really want to do?
Right? Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that first year is usually kind of a just trying to figure
Figure it out.
you know, and then you kind of figure, oh, okay, maybe we'll go into the business
Yeah.
school or, you know, whatever,
Mhm.
horticulture. But it's just like that first year,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
all kind of lost little puppies, just, you know, just enjoying their college experience, which,
Right.
you know,
Took me till 30.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had to literally dip my toe into multiple different
Before you-
trades and careers
I have
until
heard that so many times, by
Yeah.
the way, you know, it takes some time for
Mhm.
young minds to figure out what it is they really want to do in
Mhm.
life. And most people,
Yeah.
let's just say, you know, let's just say that.
Yeah.
But
And if I
agreed.
could stop tomorrow and work for Operation Smile and travel the world and fix people,
Mhm,
I would
mhm.
do it tomorrow if
Mhm.
I knew I could, you know, produce
Yeah.
for my family enough to, you know, sort of keep rocking and rolling.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe at 60.
Okay. I love it.
I want to go back to one thing we talked about, which was, you know, we're getting older, we're working longer, right? Some of us are not ever going to really retire. We're going to pseudo retire. What are the tax implications for somebody who is drawing on Social Security, but is also working?
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is one of the weirdest kind of setups that we have in our world today. Everybody has a sort of set in stone by Social Security, not by your heart or soul, your retirement date, and it's basically age 67. Right? They call it full retirement. So at full retirement, you can receive your full Social Security benefit and continue working to your heart's desire and make a gazillion dollars, and it's no big deal. All right. But if you quote unquote retire early and are drawing on Social Security, there are limits to the income you make before they raise the amount of Social Security that gets taxed. Right? So before they raise the amount of the Social Security benefit that you're receiving already, that's it happens between 62 and 67. The number sort of floats up over the years. It's around 20K. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've seen a lot of people get in that trap where, okay, I think I can kind of fully retire. My benefits not quite as much. I'm still good at what I do, so I'm going to sell 5 houses this year. And really, the commission on selling 2 of those houses was your limit. You went past it, and holy moly, next year I'm going to make less money from Social Security because they're going off my good year. And then what if that's the year I really want to be retired and I'm getting less from both ways, right? So yeah, that one's very tricky.
It is tricky.
I suggest to folks that if they have that inkling of having that income through work sources, labor, to stick with that before they start their Social Security, right? Of course, at age 67, from 67 to 70, I'll light it up whenever they're ready to sort of pull the plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, 62 through 67, it's definitely an equation
Okay.
that you got to kind of hover over, because you don't want to force yourself to have to work more at 65 than you did at 64,
Right.
just because you're getting less of a benefit.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So it's tricky. So it's definitely something to sit down with Social Security. Oh my gosh, right? So make the phone call at 9.
Yeah.
Wait until
Yeah,
it
wait
gets
till
answered
4.
at noon. Right. Let them call you back the next day. But they are the pros. They do know, and they'll give you the real rule.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people that work through Social Security who have that expertise too. They're not exactly easy to find.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the financial industry, there's a ton of people who act like they know what they're talking about and don't know the exact numbers. Like me. I mean, I don't know
Well,
the
it's a
exact
sliding
number.
scale and it's different for each
Sure.
person.
Or every year.
It all
might
depends.
change a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's not an individual.
Yeah. But your benefit is your individual number.
Right.
You know?
So what you're saying is, just to clarify, is after 67, if you start drawing from Social Security, there is a maximum income that you could be making, supplemental income that you can make.
Before 67.
Oh, before 67. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I understood.
And the number's fairly low.
Okay.
So you really do want to pay attention to it.
Okay. But after 67, you
Let
get
it
that
rip.
full benefit
Let it
amount.
rip. Rock
Okay.
and roll.
Without, now, even if you want to take a side gig job, side
Um, The only thing at that age that would be on a sliding scale would be how much money they keep from your Social Security benefit for Medicaid, or excuse me, Medicare.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Mhm.
So your Medicare benefit, if you're making a ton of money in retirement, your Medicare benefit's more expensive.
Mhm.
It's kind of logical, actually. I
Mhm.
know usually we don't equate that term with the government, but and we, we definitely don't expect that number to go up when we're in retirement. But if we're making a good money in retirement years, yes, that difference in cost
Mhm.
might pop up,
Okay,
but it's not a penalty.
I gotcha.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
just you're getting the same insurance. You're making more money. You got to pay a little bit
Okay,
more. Right?
interesting.
Kind of stinks, but whatever.
Yeah, that social security question is, I mean, who knows what it'll even be around by the time.
Well, they said that 30 years ago.
I know.
It'll- Like, yeah.
Okay,
I
so I
mean-
will say something to
Yes,
that. All
please.
right, so it's going to be a rent.
Okay.
It may be different, but it's going to be a rent, right? So we may not have our um, full retirement age until age 70.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Mhm.
but I do know this. I know it's an easy fix right now, um, but it would rely on Congress to fix it. So it won't happen until the last
Don't
minute,
hold
which
your
I think
breath.
right now, yeah, it's like 2038.
Uh,
So 2038, D-Day's coming. Oh my gosh. Look, as long as there's people working, it is a Ponzi scheme.
Mhm.
There'll be some sort of benefit out
Mhm.
Right. And to tweak it now would probably not be very violent. So in another decade, when they do actually start to tweak it, it might be a little bit violent for the people that are nearing that time, which will be us.
Yeah.
Yay.
We'll see how that
A whole nother
ratchets
reason why we're
around.
having this conversation right
Exactly.
now.
Something else
Yeah.
to look forward to. Thank you.
Yeah.
So staying on the tax conversation for a second, what are some of the tax breaks, benefits people can tap into after age 50?
All right. So my first disclaimer is that I am not a CPA and that I am not here to give tax advice. But when it comes to these tax deferred and tax free accounts, that's the way I can affect it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tax deferral through your 401k, tax free through any Roth world
Mhm.
is really your advantage. Now, if you need that tax break on the front end, the
Mhm.
traditional sense
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
is there for you.
Yeah.
If you need that, if you expect to need that in your retirement years, then Roth is there.
Mhm.
Now, I'm a big champion of Roth now and
Mhm.
of paying taxes now
Mhm.
because we've been through, I think, like 6 straight years now of $1 trillion deficits.
Mhm.
Like, try writing that number down.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Mhm.
But that lands on our shoulders,
Yeah.
the middle class, the upper middle class. That's where the taxation lands
Mhm.
because they're not going to tax themselves,
Right.
and they can't tax people that aren't earning money.
Right.
So we'll likely see tax brackets rise, and that's why I feel like that Roth version of savings is going to be priceless for us in the long haul
Mhm.
because when we pull it out, it won't get taxed.
Yeah.
Good point.
What are the penalties?
Yeah.
The difference in penalties, if there are, if somebody needs to draw on their 401k or Roth IRA early,
Yeah.
and then how do you rebound from that if you
Mhm.
you have right again because there's been an emergency of
Yeah.
some sort and you've got to
Painful topic,
Yeah.
painful conversation, and it gets experienced differently by whatever programs you have available to you. Okay, so I'm gonna go way on the most extreme example, and I can do this anecdotally also.
Mhm.
So let's say a restaurant offers a simple IRA plan to their employees.
Mhm.
Simple IRA works just like an IRA, traditional IRA,
Mhm.
and um, um, in the first 2 years of that program, because they know it's sort of a smaller program,
Mhm.
they know it's not sort of governed by a big company. It's just a small, struggling company that's allowing their folks to save.
Mhm.
The penalties can be up to like 25% in the first couple of years.
Oh.
That's 25%, and you pay taxes on the
Oh my
distribution,
gosh.
right? So it's violent and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
painful.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, those exist for a reason.
Yep.
Because they really want to motivate people to leave that money in there for the long haul.
Yeah.
But if you're a dishwasher and your mom's sick, you got to take that money.
Yeah.
There's no other avenue because
Yeah.
you don't have the income to create that emergency
Right.
fund.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably the most violent version.
Yeah.
The least violent would be like if you have the 401k program and you're rocking and rolling in that, and they allow you to borrow 50,000 of your own dollars
Yeah.
and slowly pay it back, and
Yeah.
you don't really get that tax beat down. You don't get that IRS penalty either.
Right.
Okay.
So again, there's a whole spectrum of how it's
Yeah.
treated to you personally.
Okay.
Okay.
And you can take short-term loans out. I think we have 90 days to 60 days
Yep.
sorry,
Okay.
to
Yeah.
pay back the
Absolutely. So that's a
withdrawal that
loophole,
take
if you
out
will.
of your IRA. Because we did that for our business.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
that's a loophole that exists. It's a 60-day loophole where you can use that money for the short term and get it back in. So this should make you rest a little easier on that. I've seen one person be able to get that money back in 60 days.
Yeah, I'm like 60 days. Not that. If
Right.
you're taking it out, it's really hard to get it back
It's
in there in 60
really
days.
hard.
Yeah.
And so it's just a must-do moment, right?
Yeah.
And you just have to educate yourself on what's coming.
Yeah.
And that's taxes and penalties.
Yeah.
And they suck.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I hate even talking about it.
Yeah.
And I always make sure that people know it's not a Ross penalty.
Right.
It's an IRS penalty.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm not charging
Yeah.
you this money. I didn't do it. And that's hard to get through to people too.
Yeah. Well, I know, another tough discussion, which I just feel like everyone should know these things because it is, it is so easy to be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just take it out of this account and sometimes you have to,
Right.
but
Right. But it's understanding what those ramifications are too when you do that, and then how do you build back after that?
So on a podcast, do I speak to the camera?
Yeah,
Look at you
You
guys.
can.
Because I've been thinking about this for the last hour, and it's freaking me out. Like when I look at myself, I don't like it. I
listen,
think
I'm the
we should
same
go
way.
to
But I watch other podcasts, and the thing is, a lot of them don't look at the camera.
No, they don't.
They don't. They
They're
just
trained to look at cameras.
Yeah, and they're
no.
kind of-
A lot of them are. I don't think are trained.
Well, it's funny that you asked that too, because I think part of the reason why we do the video and the audio is just because people receive their information differently.
Yes.
Like some people like to watch, and so
I'm
if
a
they watch
visual
this one, they're going to be watching my shoulder and not my face. But so I mean, it doesn't really matter because the most important thing is the podcast itself. When it goes out to all the podcast platforms, no one will be able to see you. Now, if they go to our YouTube channel, smile.
So
You're on YouTube.
I'm a commuter, so I can't watch YouTube at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think Tesla lets you do that.
Oh, okay.
But no, I soak in the podcasts and love them and love what you guys are doing. This is really
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you
This
so
has been an
much.
enlightening
It's been-
conversation.
Yeah.
I'm taking away a lot more than I came with. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely.
I'm not, now I'm like, okay, I need to go out and I need to start saving.
Yeah,
money.
more. Right. Well, and also I think also like having difficult conversations, having real conversations, and also like being real with yourself. I think that I think that's also something that comes with maturity, right? And so like when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're not thinking about those things, and then at 50, you're like, oh my gosh, it's time to get real fast.
Yeah,
And it's part of the reason why we are going to continue to have this conversation.
100%.
Putting it out there. So
When people talk about the death and taxes thing, and that's all we really talk about.
that's right.
It's wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, my
It's been
pleasure.
great.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
I'm ready to do it every week.
I love your job, which is why we're
which is
going
so great.
to come back and
I'm-
So great.
and have another discussion around
Yeah.
because this is really a broad
Right.
conversation.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's so many different rabbit holes we could go
Yeah.
down and
Sure.
really get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Totally.
love to have you back. Yeah.
And we'll take questions too. So if
Yes.
anyone wants to pose questions to
Or
send
any
them to
topics you'd like to know about that are
Right.
specific to
Yeah.
the financial advising realm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the question pool is probably pretty endless. as well.
Oh yeah, and there's a level that I can answer, and then there's a level that it just has to be individual.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not the only financial nerd in your neighborhood.
Right.
I promise. So use us, right?
Yeah.
When you're a participant in any kind of savings program, you have an advisor attached to that in one way, shape, or form.
Okay.
I don't care if you're at the biggest company in the world and you feel like a number. If you have a 401k,
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody who wants to talk to you about it, who
Yeah.
will treat you the exact same way as they treat the CEO.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're all ignorant to that,
Right.
right? Every time I sign a new person up, whether they're, the dishwasher at the restaurant or they are that CEO, I have to remind them, like, you don't have to do this all online by yourself. Come talk to people about it.
Right.
There's a phone number. Call it and get the help you want, at least just for your specific avenue.
That's right.
Yeah.
So then you won't feel like a number. You won't feel generic. You'll be empowered with that bit of knowledge that is directly focused on you.
Right.
So yeah, it's out there.
Yeah.
Just pick up that phone.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Great way to end it. Great way to wrap it up.
I was.
Thank you so much. Well, we
Thanks,
hope this
Daniel.
was valuable for you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
See you next time.
Until next time.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Bye.